2014, for one thing, being hyper obsessed with the soundtrack. And that piano piece by Scott, what was his last name? The piano piece that plays a few times in the movie, it's on the soundtrack, was kind of like my The Smiths and the Cure depression listening in my room. That soundtrack was like, I loved 80s soundtracks, but this was my, when I'm a depressed 80s soundtrack, until I discovered Michael Nyman, and then it was that for a while, but like, this soundtrack was incredible, and I think what's amazing about it is, this film has a real signature vibe. It's got a tone that is its own, and I think the music lends itself to that a lot, the color palette lends itself to that.
Yeah.
And one of the things I was wondering, and I don't know how intimately you worked on the production of the film, but how much of I've always wondered this, do you know how much of the walls were hand painted for the film? Because they all had this like, blurry, almost like a chalkboard that's just been erased. There was a lot of, everything seemed antiquated and like it's losing its color and falling apart. And I don't know, was that where you shot was already like that, or do you know if they went and there was a lot of intent to run that down? But again, it may not be something that you were privy to.
Yeah, I don't think it was. It's a great observation. That's definitely the case. And I remember that vibe, like being in all the locations, but we didn't, as I remember, we didn't have like permission to mess with that much stuff, like we were in real apartments and that old school, and I think it was more just a matter of scouting out the right kinds of places, but I really don't know, about what happened before I got to the set.
Sure, everything seemed like muted in color.
It was definitely
rainy and gloomy.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle had a lot to do with that.
Sure.
But also, yeah, but I think that was also his vision. He had definitely used it.
That's great. And then, so was this Keith Gordon's first movie? As a director, obviously, he was an actor before that.
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was.
And what was it like? How much of a role did you have working with him and shaping? Well, actually, tied to that, had you read the book before the movie?
No, I hadn't.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it had sort of a following, and I was, one of the questions I'm going to ask is, had you read it, what it was like, what sort of intentionalities you had about bringing this character that a lot of kids responded to, and that they found as like a cult hero, almost like a Holden Caulfield-esque character, to be the person to portray that role. But how much work did you do with Keith Gordon on sort of shaping the identity of the character, and then how much freedom did he give you to do the same?
It's he was a great director to work with, and I don't know that I remember doing a lot of work on shaping the character as much as just him giving very small direction in the scene and giving a sense of like what the vibe of the people was, But he was intensely into every scene, and you kind of like got him to step with him. That's what I remember doing. And I remember just not wanting to vary from that thing that he was doing. If that makes sense. Like there's a scene where I'm sitting in the hospital with the woman who played my mother, and I remember looking over him. I could tell that he was just about to cry, or he just had in that scene. Like, what the backstory was. I don't want to fuck this up. Let me just go with what I think would be here, And I think everybody on the set had that feeling.
It was interesting going back and seeing, because I think I saw the film, I was really big into films when I was a kid, but I hadn't connected who Keith Gordon was until later. I'm like, when I was thinking about his work with Paula, his work with John Carpenter at such a young age, and I always wondered how much of working with the other big directors, I think with Paula twice, and like how that may have shaped his experience working with these very visual and awkward filmmakers. Because there's a lot of visual poetry in this film, and especially the dream sequences are really haunting.
They are, yeah, but I mean, I wasn't really privy to that when we were filming. I was just kind trying to do my job on the set and do a good job of it, but I didn't know where it was going or what he was thinking about. We didn't have those kind of conversations.
Did he do anything with the actors? Like, did you all just kind of share a dynamic, or did he, because obviously did he separate you from the other actors at all, or do that sort of thing that directors do, or were you just all hanging out and boom, you're in character, action, go?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of like interference or like what might cross over into like method style acting or where nothing like that. That was the closest and tightest set that I was ever on, and maybe even the tightest workplace I've ever been to. Like I just have such fond memories of a bunch of the people. There were some people I didn't hang out as much with, I don't for whatever reason, but we were all very close and we all hung out a lot and had really good memories of a lot of the people on that set.
Well, speaking of memories, one of the things that was a trip, obviously sitting with you watching the movie, and you mentioned how long has it been since you saw this film?
I mean, I was 18 then, and I'm 56 now, and I think I saw it maybe when it came out this year, and that's it. I don't love watching myself, so
We hear that a lot from Gus. Yeah, you're not alone. But just curious to know.
Like, to the detriment of whatever films I did, if I was really into watching myself, I probably would have done a better job.
Sure. You're fantastic. But like, one of the things I'm wondering though, to the level that you're comfortable sharing, but as you were revisiting it, just do you have a couple memories or a couple thoughts that came to mind, or anything like seeing yourself, remembering the shoot, anything at all that, again, to the level you're comfortable sharing?
You know, I'm comfortable sharing everything, but I don't know how much time we have. It's weird, like, because I don't think about that on a regular basis, but like, every one of those shots is in a place that has smell. You know what I mean? I mean, like that, like right off the bat, like that, I wasn't like expecting to smell that smell again, but like there I was, and then, like I'm not sure what's going on with my hair.
It was the 80s.
But I loved that hairdresser so goddamn much. Her name was Amy, and she was pregnant, and her little boy is young. And I mean, not after, it's not like she was like, this is the best kid ever.
No.
She liked the baby, and I managed not to be a bastard enough to like to ruin it. And little IIan is a pianist, you know, in the world right now. Every once in a while, I Google his ass, you know, I've never met him, but like I like listen to some of his music. And so that like comes back up, like all like just as I'm thinking like that, what was going on with my hair? Like, but then I think about Oni and like doing it and joking about like the people I was like she didn't like it, and while the guys at Archie had this like really great life, and we were all, the budget was very low for that, and I don't have on the risk of just going on, but the budget was very low, and so we were all posted up in the Motel 6 in outside of Seattle, so we weren't in Seattle. And so we ended up being really tight, and so I got to know Wally and his wife really well, and they had this crazy dog that was like a big dog body with small dog legs, you know, just like doing its thing running around. I love that fucking dog. It's like, you know, yeah, every scene brought back like these memories that I just haven't thought of or felt for a long time. Yeah, and you know, I had worked with Jimmy Wright on a previous movie. What's that? What? Oh, the wildlife. Okay, good. Yeah, you must be the two. And like when I did the wildlife, I was 14 turning 50, and she was basically as old as she was then. But then I was like 18, so it like somehow made sense that I would miss her, and that like mattered to me at the time. Like I had like a crush on her. Yeah, so there was like every scene, like it's a little bit of an emotional thing for us.
We were talking about Tony Wright before the movie. So I was saying Trevor, our programmer, doesn't really get spoken of a lot today, but Pink Floyd, The Wall, Near Dark. I mean, great movies that are staples here, that that are cult classics, and that she just had this very distinctive presence that was dreamy and very 80s. So that was she wonderful to work with. Twice with her.
She was, but I was never in that many scenes with her, so like I remember her being that hard to life and talking to her, and she was so nice, and also a little bit flirty, which like made me hard. And then for this one, she was there for like she flew in for like 2 days of filming, and it was great to see her and hang out with her, but I didn't get to know her all that well.
Let me turn it over to the audience. Does anyone have a question? Yes, right back there.
Did you ever meet Robert Cormier?
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah, I have a memory of meeting him and talking with him. I think, but not. I didn't get to know him. I think there was just a moment where there was some moment where he was in the same place that I was, and I met him, and I remember. I don't remember talking to him, but it's so long ago that I don't have a good memory of it. Sorry about that. Yeah, but I didn't read the book, and I felt really bad about that while I was filming. Like I thought, if I was a real serious guy about this, I would be reading that book. But I was super nerdy, and I was very interested in some other things, Yeah, it was, as I remember it, that was always the case, and I knew that it had been different. And then later on, I don't even know when, I think I was going to, I ended up going to school, and I ended up staying in school. I ended up staying in school for a long time, and now I'm an English teacher. And at some point, I went to a classroom, and I kind of taught the book, and she came and talked about the movie, and so I read the book for that. And the end was pretty much the main thing that I talked about, and what the implications were of this ending versus the other one. And I remember this being always the case, as opposed to the book, which does a different thing. I mean, this is darker, right? Yeah. Yeah, we all buy into the system as opposed to we're ground outside. Yeah, right.
You can watch it with older eyes, because I don't think as a kid I really recognized just how much Archie is not. Like as a kid, I just saw like every bully I've ever had in Archie.
Yeah.
And as I'm watching it this time around, I'm just seeing an amazing face actor that Wally had. Wally was, because a lot that's just not spoken. That's just in the tension of his face and his eyes, and the way Gordon might linger on him for a little bit longer to show that there's some conflict going on there.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, the movie is about my character, but it's definitely starring Wally. My job is to be conflicted. My job is to be the king, and Wally's he's just an amazing actor.
It's still, I mean, John Glover is incredible in this.
Yeah.
I mean, he's incredible in this.
He is. I remember watching that dude wave that stick around and somehow in my mind, obviously I didn't say anything. I remember thinking he's overdoing it. This isn't gonna play. And I was 100% wrong.
Well, I mean, I feel like we see his character when he's with his accountant.
Yeah.
We see the act he puts on when he's with the students in his classroom. I feel like, about his performance is he's not at 11 the whole movie, he's at 11 when he's grandstanding.
Yeah.
Which I really did. But then he's
that's great.
It's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, everyone was incredible, and and they all worked well together. And how much, if you remember how much sometimes it's like you show up and you go, but did you have opportunities for readings and to meet Glover and Bill Dynamics?
You know, I don't remember. I don't think we had a tremendous amount of rehearsing beforehand, and we were in a very small budget. And so, what I remember is meeting everybody there on the location. I think we did some rehearsing there, but it wasn't a thing where like we were in LA or in a soundstage with us running through everything before we got to the location. The location was the place where everything happened, as I remember.
Do you remember, because I first saw the film, I remember at home, it was on VHS, introduced it to by my sister, thanks again, it was one of our favorites, we just watched over and over, and then sitting back there, I'm like, how is this movie after 1 minute? It's so dark, but I just loved it. I loved it. So I don't remember how its theatrical release went, or how it was, what the reception was. Do you recall what that was like? Festivals, anything at all, or
You know,
was
I
it?
don't. I mean, I think it did well for what Keith was trying to do with it, but it was never going to be like a blockbuster. And so, you know, some people saw it. Like I was telling you before, by the time I was in school, I tended not to talk about acting that much just because it doesn't come up. And so I was going out with this girl, and she didn't know I had been an actor, but like at some point she talked to my friend, and she said that one of her favorite movies was The Chocolate War, and my friend was like, "That's Ian," and she was like, "Really?" And we just started going, "Yeah, that's my wife who's sitting in the background." We got married. Oh no, she's in front. And so like some people saw it, you know, but I do remember like hearing that story at the time, being like, "Oh, okay, there's another one who saw it," you know. And so it wasn't like a good thing.
Yeah, I heard from what I have read, it didn't lose money. Like it actually did have a run and was seen. I just missed it, and then later on saw it. Just I always wondered how did this do?
Yeah, I don't think it would have lost money because
Because it didn't cost.
that was low, you know. But yeah, the people that Keith wanted to see it, I think saw it, and it found its way to people like you, which is exactly what you would want to all.
And you haven't, you know, the last week there have been. I'm just curious, you know, like when you heard from me, and thank you again, Mansfield, for connecting us. When you heard from Million Haters of Theater, so on, and all of it, do you rarely get, we're a theater, we want to screen The Chocolate War, will you come talk and present at the film? Is kind of unknown, or do you get requests throughout the years for this particular movie?
No.
Or,
But I don't get a lot of requests in general. I mean, it's been a really long time since I was an actor, and the one thing that a lot of people know me from, like mostly I was the other guy. You know what I mean? Like in Weird Science, there were too many kids and the other guy, and Michael Hall was like, you know, was and is a big star. So I'm not like overwhelmed by requests in general, but like every once in a while I will go to like a rare and out thing where I'm selling. Usually again Michael Hall is there, Kelly Rock is there, and my guy who brings me like takes all the photos and everything. He's great. And there's stacks of photos from everything. Like he has not had to replace the photos for this. And that's gonna stay there. Yeah, I did a TV series for a while, also that nobody ever saw. So those two are like people were great to go watch. Which one was it? It was a TV series called Superboy. It is not the Superboy that anybody saw. It was a whole another Superboy, and I was like the Superboy's working roommate. Excellent.
Yeah.
So it's great that it works for me, and I'm really glad that it did. I just don't know if I've been in a lot of conversations with people about that, other than my wife. Oh, thanks so much. That means a tremendous amount, and I'm so glad you said that. Yeah.
Earlier, Foundation, my sister and I, that we also we went to Franciscan high school. So we went through Catholic school from kindergarten all the way through high school. And our high school was Franciscan, so we also had, a connection to this film, not just in its being a Catholic school, but specifically in being a Franciscan school, where it's brother instead of father. And what's interesting is, there are some things, the bullying and the sort of hierarchical things that I responded to by, and I look at it and I'm like, I don't remember there being so much corruption. But then you grow up and you start to learn about what happened in your school while you were there. And actually, our high school was in the news, last week with a big corruption scandal. So, yeah, what, in a nutshell, what happened? Something about...
No football? Paying families to their sons when football.
Mitchell and Governor, yeah, that's where I went. Okay, so you're aware of the story. But that's like the third major scandal over the last 30 years, and I'm like, that happened at my high school? So it's interesting, these sorts of things. There's corruption that happens with money, and the swimming pool that never happened, and all the things with our high school. So yeah, I can totally relate to what you're saying. And I Heaven Help Us was another big film that we used to watch a lot too. But any other? But yes.
I was just going to jump on that because, we were talking earlier, about my memory of the Franciscan was so different from the ones in the film. But then watching it again now, I'm like, oh my God, all our teachers were but poor. So it was more that I couldn't relate to the bad guy. That is what stuck in my memory. But that scene with Bud Cort where he's just, let me just go in and play along with these kids was just perfect with what I remember.
Say, we had a lot. I had a lot more like Ford than John Glover. Fortunately, yeah, fortunately.
He seems like the one to have.
And he was a perfect, speaking of Bud Cort too, because again, the movie reminds me a lot of 70s cinema, just in how it approaches character, the stillness of it all, the introduction to music, introduction suddenly of what would be considered a surreal visual. Sometimes, mostly in dream sequences, but sometimes just in someone sort of dissociating a little bit, the bed on the football field, things like that. And I always wondered if the Bud Cort inclusion was sort of Keith Gordon's tribute to Hal Ashby or Harold Mott, if he was a big fan of it, and he's not here, but
I think he was excited to have him part of the project, and we all kind of were, and so that was part of the conversation. But I don't remember him saying specifically like this is going to be the thing that contribute to that movie. But like obviously it was going to because I thought it just hasn't been in that many films, Right? So yeah.
it wasn't just him pop up after now he's about a cheerleader and you won't see him again. Your Dogma, like he'd be very selective about the films he did, but they were always, these auteurish sort of very sort of personal films. Dogma was very personal to Smith, and But I'm a Cheerleader to Babbitt, and certainly this just feels like a very personal film to Keith Gordon. I know nothing about Keith Gordon, but when I watch it, this had to be personal for this filmmaker.
Yeah, and like I said, there were moments you could tell he was invested, and I didn't know his background or what it came from, why this was so meaningful to him, but I knew that it really was. And and all of us, like I said, it wasn't a huge budget, and none of us were making that much money off of it. And so part of the spirit on the set was really we all kind of wanted to be there, and we had no business affording independent musicians. You know what I mean? And I remember him saying, I just sent the script, and Peter Gabriel was like, okay, fine, no problem, because then we couldn't have afforded a straight business transaction. It had to be someone who was like, I believe in this somehow, I love this.
Yeah, I have this. connection to Yaz and to Bush, and
Yeah.
certainly that really haunting piano piece that's lived in my DNA for the last 30 years. And Peter Gabriel,
Yeah.
to the fact, to the point that when, was it a couple of years ago when I got that Hope popular, like, oh yeah, they used it in the show finally, and I'm like, look, yeah. But, yeah, no, it's just, it's an incredible soundtrack. And I mean, I don't know how many of the artists may have, like, given them, like, really good deals to use the music. Because you hear that now, that the budget sometimes is, like, the soundtrack, and then they pay for everything else.
Yeah. No, across the board, I think all the artists were somehow, like, into the idea of film. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you wanted, if you have a difference in how you perceived any of the characters now watching it as an adult versus when you were filming it as a kid, where, you know, I'm the freshman and it's me and these are the bad guys, you know. Because I feel like I haven't matured at all because I'm still, for some reason, too punchy. Like, I related to him as a kid, like, God, this poor kid is in this horrible situation. Even though he's a bully, I mean, and now, don't look at me like that. But even now, as an adult, I like should feel even more empathy for him. And I'm wondering
Is this why you became a child psychologist?
Yes.
Okay.
So I was just curious, like, you know, do you see any difference in how you are processing the characters now versus when you were a kid filming it in that position?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm still seeing it through the same eyes that I watched it before, and the experience is the same for me mostly. I mean, there's other things that happen, like, I think for everybody, like, sometimes you wonder why that 37-year-old is in high school, you know?
Right.
You know, like, some of those guys are not kids.
Actually, why you talk about Wally's wife? And I'm like, wife? Why you guys, how old was that actor?
Yeah.
I mean, I just turned 18, I think, and he was probably 22, 23. So I think he got married young, but, like, you know, he was married, he had a dog and a house, and like the whole, like, what one does, you know? Yeah, and Doug, was, I think he was, like, getting close to 30, or in his mid-30s, so definitely still a little bit. Yeah, so I still see it through the same eyes, pretty much. I mean, at the time, I think everybody did a really good job, and I don't remember that being particular. Like, I remember thinking, like, that work was okay, and, like, all the things that I wish I had done differently, you know. But this time around, I was really kind of blown away by Gruber, and how good he was with the small actor in his face. And so I think I noticed that a little bit more this time, maybe because I was less stressed about, like, whether it was going to work or whether it was going to be okay.
How did your cast? What was the casting process?
I mean, not in a way that's satisfying. I mean,
It's okay.
it's a long time. I mean, you get these snippets, you know, that I don't. So, I had been in a few things before that. So often what happened at the time, I don't know how it is now, but at the time, like, I would have to do the process after a couple of times. I was like, basically, because they had already seen my work and they had seen the photo. And I can tell you exactly what that room looked like I was in. And it was in the 50s on the east side in New York. And there was like a table that was like in view, and I was sitting here. Like, I don't remember the whole process. I just remember that there was a table that was in view, and there was a
So you came in and auditioned, just like,
Yeah.
you saw, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Keith was reading to me, and I made a connection with him. Like, we had eye contact, and I was saying things, and I just felt real good about it just because of that contact we had. And I remember thinking, like, that went well. You know, not that I, like, knocked that apart with my choices, but just that, like, that we were in there kind of, like, acting things together, and I felt like that, where sometimes you just don't feel that at all. So that's what I, yeah.
We got time. questions. Don't be shy. Yeah.
I mean, John Hughes was a great guy, and I have a lot of good memories of him. And it's hard to, there's a scene in Weird Science where everything, where like the magic of happens in the movie makes everything in the kitchen blue. And he was talking to us about the scene and about directing something, and we like each flavoring out of like a bright blue diffuser and put it while he was talking. And like, and he just kept on going, you know, just eat that chip. And like, we were all like, and later on I was like, those were spray peas, right? And he was like, anything for a laugh. I was like, oh man, like you just poisoned yourself, that's committed. But also he kind of played it off. He was a really cool guy, but you got the sense that he had not always been. And so I like that memory of him eating the chip, and I have other memories that I would like him, and especially his interest in music, which I learned a lot about music from the people I worked with, and I always like that. The wildlife, because you know, it's Cameron Crowe who's plugged into a lot of music. But I felt like somebody was talking to me about Weird Science, and it was like, you know, sometimes parents show their kids. So this was a girl who was like 15 or something. She was like, I love Weird Science, and she was like, and you're like a golden nerd, because like most people in movies they play nerds, but they're not really nerdy. But you're like more nerdy than your character, and that matters. And it's true. Like I am probably the nerdiest person that most people will meet. Maybe not in these surroundings, but like for most of the time, like if there's a nerd thing, I do it. And I remember feeling like that was John maybe too, right? That he was super cool and super in charge, but that maybe growing up he had been the kind of nerd that he was writing about. And I like that memory of him.
Distinctive favorite memories shooting the chocolate? Or Keith?
I mean, yeah, he's partner at the time, and I think it was film. I don't know if it was Rachel, and I liked both of them a lot. And I have a lot of memories of what they both look like laughing, and they laugh in very different ways. You know, Keith was kind of like that laugher, and Rachel was like that, and I like that a lot. And I remember the room that we used for hair and makeup, and I hung out there a lot. And there was a sound guy who, like, you know, it was a great experience, and I've been really lucky to have stumbled into being an actor, and a lot of good things came to me from that. So I'm going to be the first person to always be thankful that that happened, and to acknowledge that I got super lucky. Especially because I don't think I had that much skill, so it really was luck, you know. But it's also, that being said, it can sometimes be super lonely. And so I have really good memories of hanging out with Wally, but I was young to do that. Like we weren't best friends. They like had me over to their room sometimes, or like we went out to dinner. And the same thing with Keith and Rachel, but I spent a lot of time in my room with like role-playing games, just like designing stuff and rolling dice. And there was a sound guy who was really nice, who lived in Seattle, and he had a daughter named Destiny. And for whatever reason, like he would have me over to his house, and sometimes I would sleep over. I think just because he knew that I was like alone there in Motel 6 with like with BattleTech and a BB gun. Those are my two best friends. So that was a really nice memory too. I'm not in touch with them anymore, but hanging out with them was really nice.
And you say very humbly that you feel like you didn't have a lot of talent to bring in, but one of the things I always respect about this film is that as a protagonist and as, you know, essentially the conflicted hero of the movie, as talky as Wally was, as John Glover was. It's all, you know, and the scenes where you say no, I think are incredibly well acted.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hope so. I hope so.
It's got to carry. It's got to carry the
Yeah.
defiance, but also the vulnerability, and you know, difference between the nose of I can't because I'm under pressure versus the nose of this is in my hands now and I'm saying no are so
Yeah.
distinctively done.
Yeah,
That's
I
one of the
mean-
things I appreciate about your
Yeah, no, I
performance.
mean, you talking about that is 100% like bringing me back to those moments where I'm like, okay, these are the things that I need to be thinking that I'll do with my eyes, but in watching it, like, it's just very easy to be critical, especially if it's, I feel like movies matter to people. And, like, this is what you said, right? And they matter to me, like, the movies that matter to me are just super important, and you just don't want to mess that up. And so watching it here, I'm like, ooh, would less have been more there? You know, like, there's like a whole long list of things, but I appreciate you saying that. I'm glad that it worked for you.
For sure, it's not happening every time. It's not why you don't like to revisit because you're just always
100%.
critiquing yourself.
Yeah, I'm always like, yeah.
No, I totally understood. Yes.
Some screening some years ago with, I forget what it is, but they can do, and demonstrated to one of his kids, and they walked out during the sex scene. Specifically so her son wouldn't see that scene. And there was no sex in this one, but I know that your daughter had never seen it and was here watching it with you today, so of course
Yeah, my
I
daughter
thought.
Basil was in the back here.
Yes, and I thought was there anything going through your mind about your child now watching this for the first time?
I mean, I was wondering, I mean, we haven't had a chance to talk about it. So, like, yeah, I mean, I was wondering how it was for her and whether she liked it or whether, like, you know, if I'm being perfectly honest, thumbs up, okay, nice, cool. If I'm being perfectly honest, like, I would love for my acting to have been the thing that I'm like, just throw at my kids and be like, boom, have a look at your dad. You know what I mean? But I'm not so confident with it. And so there was a little part of me that's like, oh God, what's Weezy? Weezy is human. What's Weezy thinking right now? Like, I wonder if she's noting the times that I thought maybe less would have been more, or something like that. Like, that went through my mind too. But, yeah, and then I think afterwards we were talking a little bit, as a son also, and both my daughter and my son looked a lot like me. I think they looked like my wife also, but, and so, I was thinking that when I was looking at myself, and I think that they were too, that it looks a lot like my son Asher. And then when we were talking, I was like, it also looks exactly like you guys, you know?
I have to say on that note that it was really exciting before the movie started and when you introduced Basil and you mentioned you've never seen it. And I'm like, I'm proud of this film. You get to see your dad's movie for the first time on the big screen.
Yeah.
You know, and it looked really good too in a remastered
Yeah,
version. So
you should show all those episodes of Superboy too.
No.
okay. I told you how many episodes are there?
Probably too many.
We're trying to get. If we're doing all the Twin Peaks, we can do that. I think we have time for maybe one more. Don't be shy. It's okay. All right. Nope. Oh, last chance. Yes. There you go.
I really like the genre of somebody resisting peer pressure. And I don't really feel like I've seen that in like anything else. Where the story is not horribly, but in more experience.
Like Dream Girls?
Oh, maybe.
Like, is that, were you saying like what other movies do that same thing? And like Dream Girls does that, doesn't it? Heathers?
Oh,
Yeah.
ETA.
Easy A, yeah, who said that? Yeah, nice. I love that.
This one is like I think the distinction is between Girls, Heathers, EZA is with maybe a couple features here and there, but it's really resistance against the bullying from their peers. And I can't think of a lot where the resistance against a corrupt administration and a corrupt teacher. Whether or not Jerry even knew about the corruption. it's never clear that Jerry knew what brother Leon was doing, but clearly it was rallying brother Leon. I mean, he felt that he was being resisted against. The vigils felt like they were being resisted against. I mean, it's so complex. To know about this movie is there's so much going on with power. Who's really in power? Brother Leon is essentially the villain of the movie, but he's under tremendous pressure. He wants to keep his job. Waldy's character in any other movie would just be a stock bully, but you see the pressures he's under.
Right.
I mean, really, ultimately, Adam Baldwin's the big bad in this movie, in my opinion. But
Yeah, but he's such a tool that, like, you can't,
Sure.
you get this, you do get, like, sort of this disembodied sense of power and how it affects everybody.
I don't think he ever interacts with Leon.
Yeah, no.
He's one of the big cherries, the one that, which is interesting. His story. I don't know, as people, you clearly read the book, yes? For a fan, if you're a deep fan of this movie, is the book, like, you should really read this book, because I just haven't. Yes, like I see a lot of it. So that's my homework, is to catch up with the novel. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you here. Just thank you so much for coming out. I just wanted to feel everything I want to say. This is one of my favorite films, and it was a treat to watch it with you and with all of you. Who was here for the first time again? Sorry, who saw it for the first time again? I'm sorry. Excellent. And everyone that's got their hands up for the first time, we're smiling. And you, first time for you too? Okay, great. Thanks for giving a chance to a film that was, maybe hadn't heard of. We love our audiences here. Thanks for coming out and watching movies and hearing from our guests.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed it. And those who had seen it before, I'm so glad that you liked it.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you. Let's hear it one more time for our amazing guest, Mitchel-Smith. Thank you so much.